about that in greater detail, is about making sure that the SEC is listening to our communities, listening to people in early stage companies and startups and beyond, to make sure that there are regulatory issues that are preventing us from getting access to capital. And I think that's a pretty good description. I'm proud to do my best here, and I'm sure Martha and also Julie Davis is with her as well today. And I'll let them both sort of introduce themselves, but I don't want to take a lot of time. This should be a very interactive session. I think it's a chance for us to learn really about what the SEC is trying to do to make opportunities available for us to get access to capital and make sure there aren't regulatory restrictions that are creating them. So very open forum tonight. No wrong questions, bad questions, stupid questions, none of that stuff. And with that being said, can you all hear us? I can sing for you later if you want.
No.
We can do karaoke with Wayne.
And I've never been told that I'm quiet, so we should be in good shape. Let me know if I just need to elevate a little bit.
There we go. That's great. So I would love it if you could start to tell us a little bit about you and your background and your role in the SEC.
Yeah, so
We've had a chance to get to know each other today a little bit.
yes,
I've already addicted her to salmon salads. She's already excited.
I'll be back. It's not just for that salad, it was awesome. I'm thrilled to be here, and just to give a little, I'll give a lovely caveat. I want us to be able to have a candid conversation today. And so I want you to join in and share feedback and perspective with us. And then I will also say that the way that I get to have a candid conversation, according to our General Counsel's office, is by making a lovely standard disclaimer that anything that I say today represents my perspectives and not necessarily the views of the commission, commissioners, or commission staff, which is a lovely lawyerly intro into me saying that I'm from the federal government. And I love to go from the fun part of the government. I'm from the Securities and Exchange Commission, which is the federal agency that's responsible for regulating our capital markets. It's about 80 years old. It's the group of people most commonly associate with regulating public companies and really regulating the disclosures that public companies make in the public markets. So when companies go public, there's an IPO, all that documentation rolls through us. What people a lot of the time don't think about is the fact that there is a whole other element of what we do, which is setting the rules for how you raise capital in the private marketplace. So when you go out and raise money from whether it is angel investors or venture capitalists or anybody else besides doing a registered listing, that has to follow with the certain rules. And so our office was created, can we give the background of our office where we came from? Yeah. So our office was created, we're brand new. We're a startup within the government, which has been really fun. There is actually no guidebook for how to create a new office within the government. There's very few people that actually get the chance to do it. And so what I did with building our office was approach it in a lot of ways like a business would do it. So I went out trying to get perspective and feedback from potential customers, figure out what we needed to do, what would work, and then put together a business plan. And part of that, the business plan is available online, by the way. You can Google it or go on our website, you can pull a copy of it, put together out there exactly what we were going to do, what our MVP was, what our full-scale program would look like. And then much to some people's chagrin who did not think that I should put the dates for when we were going to do all of it, I wanted to put target dates and commit to different quarters when you could expect things to launch. And we stuck to all of it. So it's been wonderful.
Startup lessons there.
So yes, we went out and basically pitched our office and figured out what was needed. So our office came about through bipartisan legislation, which is great. You don't hear about things where something comes out of a committee unanimously and then has broad support across the aisle. I feel like most of what you hear about in the news is the inability for people to agree about issues. And I think that really is a testament to the fact that of all the things that can divide us, we still recognize the importance of small businesses and small business capital formation and supporting the growth of new companies. And there's also challenges with that, so we come to expect a whole lot from small businesses. If you look at the statistics and numbers, about 66% of net new jobs in the country each year are created by smaller companies. And then you have this expectation of job creation. We love to talk about it. There's actually a really great Last Week Tonight with John Oliver episode about a year ago where he opens up and he does a mashup of people, all these different politicians from every different political party, saying that small business is the backbone of our economy, and it's almost become trite and pretty commonplace to say, but it's true. We really do expect growing businesses and entrepreneurs to carry the weight of job creation. But then you have that on the one hand, majority of job growth, we're expecting it from smaller businesses. And then you flip it on the other hand and you look at 4 out of 5 companies, they don't access venture capital financing. There's a lot of challenges, and those challenges are exacerbated based on who you are and where you're located. And there's a lot of just very different degrees of if you're raising capital in some of the hotbeds of activity, if you're in Boston or you're in New York, you're in Silicon Valley or even Texas now to an extent, it's a little bit different to raise capital than here. We were talking earlier today about where does it start to become hard if you're setting a dollar amount for what you're looking to raise, where you start facing challenges finding it locally. And that number looks really different depending on where you are. So all of that said, Congress looked and said, and Hill was a part of that group that looked and said, we have a need here where somebody needs to be taking a look at the rules that govern how these companies actually raise capital and taking a special eye towards making sure that the voice of small business is heard. Very few entrepreneurs. How many of you in the room, by the way, have a small business currently? Okay. Interested in starting a small business? Just very excited to come here and meet with us, the catch-all category.
Everyone raise their hands.
Everyone, of course. But I doubt that any of you, if you have a small business, have a dedicated government relations person. Somebody that when you run into an issue that's caused by something with the government, picks up the phone and knows exactly who to call to fix it. It's just not something that most small businesses have. But the problem that you see is a lot of small businesses all face similar or the same issues, and we don't always hear about them, but they happen on a repeat basis. So the aggregate effect of those can be huge. And it's important that we hear about the impact of those. And so that's the genesis of our office. They got together and they said, let's put together an office that's focused on accessing capital and advocacy on solutions to the problems that are faced by small businesses, from startup all the way through kind of a growth and maturity phase where you're looking at raising big amounts of capital from venture investors or private equity investors or someone else on the institutional scale, and even companies that are going forward with an IPO and have recently gone public but are still on the smaller side of the scale of public companies. And so they wrap all of that in, which depending on how you do the math, is about 90% of the marketplace, and they stuck that with our office. And so we were created, and I was appointed by our 5 commissioners. We're an independent agency that's run by 5 commissioners that are appointed by alternating to local parties. This is trivia in case you have a federal trivia round that comes up. I don't know what trivia night you're going to, if that is one of the things that they start asking, but just in case, now you've got some new facts for it. I was appointed by our 5 commissioners and tapped to come and run this new office, and it has been absolutely wonderful.
She's also from Birmingham, so she's.
Yeah, you can hear it. It'll come out more and more the longer I'm here. I've only been on the airplane about 6 hours, but it'll continue to come out. I'll sound more and more like I'm from Alabama the longer that I'm here. That's all, which is a great thing.
She's happy to be back in the South, that's for sure. But that's a great start. So one of the things that we talked about a little bit today was the whole issues associated with accredited investors. Big issue. And for those of you who try to raise capital, one of the things you have to make sure is that people actually qualify to be able to make those investments. Who's had a challenge with that? Has anybody, at least I was going to say, maybe Joshua you have as well, I don't know, maybe others, but what sort of challenges have you had with that? Is that you've gone to people and said, hey, I'd love to have you invest in my company, and through the testing and due diligence that you've done, you've been unable to take money from them because they're not accredited investors? What's been the challenge that you're facing?
So, I haven't personally had a challenge with somebody turning out to be not accredited. But I know there have a lot of women in the state would love to have access to the investment vehicles that are provided by all these startups. And they individually, without their husband's money, probably don't qualify to be accredited. And they don't have the expertise. They would like to have access to those opportunities. And so I see it as a problem from that perspective.
I was just listening.
Oh,
No,
no,
but
we
you
need
didn't
to
put that yet.
Out of that space.
You waving your hand or you scratching?
I was like, wait, I mean, was actually asked that question, I think, that you had sent this to, because it's like what, you want to invest in a company, if you're not working like 200,000, you have to go back with 3 years, or you got to have a combined 300,000. The felony things, but you want to invest in a business, let's say it's your friend's business, and he only wants 30,000, typically you can't get equity if you're not working, we don't have that, 200,000 over like 3 years. Is that right? Is that wrong?
Yes, so what we use, the credit investor standard, for those who aren't familiar or who like brushing up on securities trivia, is a standard that comes out from, there's some case law a while back, like back in the 50s. It's Ralston and Purina, to be very specific on it, that set out a standard for people being able to fend for themselves. What we had for a long time, for a couple of decades, was a standard where it was really hard as a company for you to know if the investor in your business could fend for themselves in terms of whether or not they could stand up toe-to-toe with you and it was okay for them to be an investor. We came along a couple of decades later, in the 80s, and put out a standard for accredited investor, which was basically a proxy where they said, okay, we need a simple tool, because you figuring out if each person can fend for themselves, that takes a lot of time. It's hard to get certainty. There's no bright line you can draw. And so what they decided to use was your income or your wealth as a proxy for sophistication and whether or not you could stomach losses, plus you're sophisticated to analyze the investment risks. And that's a standard that's been in place for a long time, and right now we're taking a fresh look at if we hit it right. There's been candidly a lot of feedback that says maybe that's not the right way to do that. What if that's causes a different impact depending on where you are in the country? A salary of $200,000 is very different if you live in New York City versus if you live here versus if you live out in rural Arkansas. You're just going to have a totally different impact. That also doesn't necessarily strike along the same lines of financial sophistication. There are plenty of people that are talented and they really know the company or they really know the industry, but they may be precluded from investing, and it gets people pretty fired up when you tell them they can't do something because there's a standard that says when you do and you don't qualify. And what we really want to understand is how we should, if we should, how we should change it to make it work better. To keep the investor protection piece, but also give people access.
I'll add something to that point. For me, with my clients, I'm able to have
Why don't you share your name and what you do? That'd be great too.
Sure. My name is Ross Burnett, and I'm over at Merrill Lynch. So I help clients manage their money for them, financial planning, things like that. And some of the younger clients that I have that might not have a net worth of $1 million, but they might make $100,000, $150,000 a year. It could be single. People that are younger wanting to have more of an impact in their investing, and it's not just a generic mutual fund or ETF or whatever that could be, or individual stock. They want to go out and own something that's different because us as a generation have more access to technology and information, so we understand the risks better. And so when we look at investing in a private equity or venture capital put together through KKR or another hedge fund manager or something like that, we understand what that risk means, whereas you had to go call a 800 number in the past or go to the library and look at the perspectives. I have difficulty because clients that might be 40 and under or might not have the net worth needed, they can't invest in these vehicles, and it's frustrating. Let alone come to something like this where you can't invest, even though you're an advocate for this type of vehicle. I myself included, am not eligible to invest in venture capital or private equity or anything like that. So I think if you look at information and how it's received now versus then might have a different effect on the risks associated with it.
Yeah, it certainly has gotten a lot less expensive and time intensive to share information. The internet has done wonders in terms of your ability to find out things about companies and investment opportunities. And we still have, we've got on the one hand, a new system of finding out information and sharing information and crowdsourcing feedback on it. And then on the other hand, we have some long-standing rules and legacies that predated those systems by a long shot. And so right now, we're trying to take a fresh look at the ways that the system may need to be tweaked and changed to make things work better.
Is there any thinking, as you talk about the different it's in a New York or an Austin or San Francisco versus a little rock versus a pine bluff versus a rural area, where there would be consideration given, because there is a line that is drawn that is the same for everyone. Right? And the fact is that incomes, demographics, geographics affect that. So is there any thinking that's been given to, well, if you're in this specific area that is guided by this sort of size of demographic and average income, et cetera, that those rules might be different for someone in, say, Pine Bluff versus someone in San Francisco? Is that?
So that there have been people that thought, okay, well, what if you adjusted it for where you are in the country?
Exactly.
Here's the challenge. Like, let's imagine that you're raising money for your company and you're bringing in investors from 5 different states. Do you need to go and then try to adjust for the cost of living in each place and run through the calculus? It becomes harder. There's the challenge of, yes, you could get to a standard that's more nuanced, but potentially at the expense of a lot of diligence challenges for the company. And so, not saying that one is right or wrong, but there have been challenges. One of the things that we've heard more people say is there's interest in an alternative standard. Is there a different way that you can qualify? Is there a test that you can potentially take that's administered that proves that you have some financial sophistication or savvy? What if you've got one of your series examinations and you're a financial professional? Could that qualify? Could there be ways that you could opt in? Another thing that we've heard a lot of people talk about is, what about opportunities for people to invest in a diversified pool that's investing in earlier stage, higher growth companies, so that what you're not having to do is go out and source, the top 10 deals each year, recognizing the risks of failure among early stage companies, that you have to make a number of bets to, statistically come out ahead. What if you could invest in a single type of fund, whether that's venture or private equity or some other type of fund, or a public fund that can hold securities in earlier stage companies, and that can provide you with a tool to access the high growth of earlier stage companies. So those are all different potential solutions to the issue that we're hearing from people who don't like being left out of the growth opportunities of the companies they hear about that have started from someone's garage and are now ringing an opening bell on Wall Street and with a huge valuation.
One of the things that I always question when it relates to things like regulatory, the SEC and so forth, is the clear intent here is to be protective of the investor. I mean, maybe you could clarify that a bit further, but fundamentally ask yourself the question, if I want to invest in your company, whether I'm an accredited investor or not, it's my money, I'll take the risk. Why can't I do that? So the SEC plays a role to, and how does it become the SEC's role to do that? Speed limits are set to protect me also, but I don't drive 55. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, so I mean,
Maybe you could take this.
yeah, so I think investor protection is one of the 3 pieces of our mission. So I think it's important. This is the first one, which is protecting investors. The second one is maintaining fair, orderly, and efficient markets. And then the third is facilitating capital formation. So it's a 3-part mission. And there are some people that view it as an either or, that you do one at the expense of the other. And in my perspective and in my experience, and I came from private practice as an attorney, and so I spent a lot of time working with companies, hashing out different deals and making sure that they got through closings and they moved on to the next milestone, focusing on their company as opposed to on legal documents and deal signings, which are not the most exciting part of running business. It would be the business part. But one of the things that I've seen, and I think that there are people that think, okay, there's investor protection and that's all that we're focused on. But we are very much so focused on making sure that capital formation, so forming your stack of capital and getting access to funding works well. And if you overweight one without viewing the other, it gets very lopsided. I equate it to a 3-part stool. You have to have all 3 pieces, and if you cut one leg, the whole thing falls over. There is no 2-legged stool or 1-legged stool. That basically just requires you to use your other 2 legs as the posts for the stool. And so you need quality opportunities for investors. Protecting investors also means having a pipeline of companies that you can invest in that are going to provide you with returns for investment growth, for your retirement savings. And so they are inextricably linked in my mind.
What's the answer is somewhat obvious to most people, I think it is, but I'm interested in your perspective. You know, people invest for a number of reasons, but ultimately it's really about growing wealth. Is that the key reason that people really invest in?
I think it is. There's also people that invest because they really like the product or the technology. They want to see it come to market. There are plenty of people that invest in something because it has an opportunity, because they just like it, or they like the people that are creating it. I don't think most people invest not making a charitable donation mindset to the company. They want to see a return, but whether or not it is just a profits motive or they have some interest in the underlying good of the company or kind of a social mission or impact of the company, there's various different reasons, but profit is usually one. It's just whether or not the investor weights that as the primary. Depends on the person.
On the Jobs Act of 2012, the equity crowdfunding, I think that the cap's still at $1 million, where
It does.
we talked
It's
a little bit
inflation
about
adjusted,
that.
so it's technically 1.07 million right now, but yeah, effectively 1 million. So talk about crowdfunding.
Yeah.
Well, anything specifically about it?
Well, just like, so the cap being at, like you said, just inflation, $1.7 million. So if let's say, if all in this room, we had $100,000, we wanted to invest, let's say, in Joshua business, how would we go about doing that? Would we do that?
So there's crowdfunding, and just for background on crowdfunding, have you ever heard of, a lot of people have heard of what we call rewards-based crowdfunding, so like a Indiegogo or a Kickstarter campaign. I invest in indestructible stocks and one of them just, you find a product and you basically pre-order it. That's different from when you're making an equity investment in a company, which is when you're not getting like pre-release product back. So that's just one important distinction. The Jobs Act created what we call regulation crowdfunding, which allow you to raise up to $1 million from people over the internet through a registered portal. And there's limitations on the amount that individual investors can put into any individual company. And a lot of that was set out by Congress. There were a lot of concerns that people would just find something on the internet and throw everything behind it, thinking they've got great graphics and I like the business plan, and the product may not be successful, the company may not thrive. And so you've got regulation crowdfunding, which is one which comes with a lot of safety. It comes with seat belts and airbags built in to make sure that people don't invest too much in it, and that kind of limits how much you can do with it, both from an aggregate amount and individual amount. There's also something that we would call accredited investor crowdfunding, which was another thing that came out, which is 506C regulation. Reg D is the private placements exception. I know that it's never fun to hear somebody speak in regulatory citations. But I think just making sure that there's a clear distinction between the two, that allows you to raise unlimited amounts of money using the internet, but you can't go to just anybody you would like who sees the website. They have to get accredited. And so that gets into, you can go out and raise money using it, so you could raise more than $1 million with that tool, but you would only be able to bring in that money for people that pass the sophistication tests. So the answer to your question is not a clear yes or no, you can do it. It depends on the way that you went about it and who you brought in. One thing that we are hearing from people is $1 million may not get me where I need to go. I would like to be able to use the tool, but it doesn't provide me as effective of a means of raising capital as they would like. And so there are a lot of people that would like us to change the rules on that, and we're welcome to feedback on it.
You still have to go through the state SEC, you all are the federal, but also you have to also the state level SEC. Is that correct?
There are state securities administrators involved, so some states have their own crowdfunding exemptions, and I don't know if Arkansas has a state crowdfunding exemption that's different. Not every state does, but it would require you to do everything. You only have investors that are local within the state, and would be some other requirements for it to not trigger the federal requirements. So realistically speaking, if you're raising money on the internet, you're probably not confined within a state boundaries with what you're doing. It's just a general rule of thumb. Certainly it's possible. You can have somebody click through a website and confirm where they are, but it's not, you don't see it as often.
So I got a question along the same line of the job thing. So how has it gone? Because I know that before, whenever we lead up to the SEC taking forever to come up with the rules and all that. Some people are predicting that it's gonna be $100 million market by next year, or it's gonna be not $100 billion market, by next year, 200 billion, 300 billion, and it seemed like after the raise came out, either I stopped paying as much attention or people stopped talking about it as much. So, I mean, has it had the result in capital formation? I guess, has it been useful? And, do people really invest in, I guess, are the portals taking equity investments, or are they structuring some type of loans or something? Like, is it working?
Yeah, so I'll answer the last question first. So you have flexibility. You can do, there's some portals that you can go out and offer convertible notes. They would be assumption that most of the portals were going to be offering debt as opposed to equity. And that you would basically crowdsource where you may not have a community bank in your community anymore. And you can have a pool of customers. If you're the pizza shop that needs to buy a new oven, that you put up what you need to raise it, and your customers basically fund it. There was the idea that would probably be the more prevalent usage. But a lot of people have been using it for equity. I think it's important that Jobs Act had a whole lot more emphasized crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is one small piece that I think it's been slower to see the uptick in utilization of it. One of the things, though, that was in there is the emerging growth company definition. This is a concept that was added to basically create an easier, smoother on-ramp for companies that wanted to go public and to scale back some of the requirements for public company compliance. And you did see a flood of new companies joining the public markets by way of that exemption, and particularly in companies that needed a lot of research and development funding. So a lot of bio and life sciences companies did utilize the emerging growth company construct. So you did see a flood of new companies, more than you had in previous years.
So is that a direct public offering, or is that something different?
That is something different, but it is related. So that's made a lot of news this year with Spotify and Slack with the direct public offering, which is a new way of going to market. So just listing your shares as opposed to going down and actually bringing in new capital to the company. That basically just gives liquidity mechanism for existing holders. One thing though, to the amounts of money that I think is an important point. When you look at the amounts of money that are raised in the markets, right now, last year was about $1.4 trillion were raised in the public markets. So that is companies using our registered exchanges and markets to raise capital, whether it's an initial or follow-on offering. Compare that to what's happening in the private markets, 2.9 trillion. So about double. 1.7 trillion of that was raised by operating companies using Regulation D, which is the private placements exemption, and most people use bringing capital in. So it's more than hundreds of billions. It's trillions of dollars. It's a lot of money that is being raised in the markets each year.
And just slight follow-up, so has crowdfunding though, has the $1 million below type crowdfunding, has that added to that, or has it made any impact?
It's a drop in the bucket. Candidly, it is. I mean, what we've seen in the data that we just look back of the 3 years, we just have wrapped up in May, was the 3-year anniversary of the regulations coming out, so people really being able to make use out of it. And I think Julie was around $250,000 was the average amount raised by companies using it. So some of them set lower targets. Not every company goes out and wants to raise the full $1 million. They don't necessarily need it. They just want to raise whatever amount. And so about $250,000 is the average amount raised. It does not have nearly the traction of some of the other exemptions that have been around for decades, where people know them in and out, and they're efficient. There's also not a cap on how much you can raise with those, so it skews the number a little bit.
Gotcha. I mean, strategy.
Yes, I recognize you from the slide deck. I saw the wonderful deck about the venture center. It's impressive.
There have been some other new investment opportunities that have been created for people. I think specifically about an organization that we call Economics, for example. So Manning Field was at Arkansas and spent some time with us here. Actually, has offered his time to advise, and he's actually working with some of the folks in the audience that we have here today. But what is the SEC's opinion of that, those roundup technologies and the ability for people to co-invest in a fractional way. Do you guys get involved in that at all? Is that something that even crosses your radar?
You know, that is not something that I have personally spent much time on. I can't speak, we have 4,400 people on the SEC, so I can't say that there's not somebody that hasn't spent time on it. But, you know, really what we're focusing on is a lot of identifying, you know, if the way that it would come up for our office is if somebody picked up the phone and said, hey, there's this funky friction where this just doesn't make sense. We keep hitting the same roadblock, or, you know, we have to turn away these investors. Where this deal wasn't successful, and it wasn't because of our technology or our product, it was because of some regulatory issue, that's when it would come across our desk. So I can't speak to if it's on the SEC's radar. It's a lot of people I need to check that through. I don't even know how we would go about checking it through 4,400 people. But I hope if they're having any issues that they're raising them with us and making sure that they know they have a voice that's interested, ears that are interested, I should say.
How do any of you in the room, if you are trying to invest, or you want to invest, or you're trying to grow your wealth, how does some of you go about doing that? Just maybe you can share that with myself if somebody's willing to do that. So, you know, many of us have access to perhaps 401k, mutual funds, those sorts of things that we are typically exposed to through our employers, not necessarily personally. Many of you who are with us today are actively involved in the entrepreneurial community here and are working with companies who are in an early stage or startups, et cetera. You know, one of the things we always hear is, you know, you need fuel, right? You need spark, you need air. Well, fuel is always the cash, right? We have combustion. So we're always struggling with trying to find more capital and more access to capital. So I don't know if anybody wants to kind of put their hand up and talk a little bit about what they may be doing to try to improve their own personal wealth, and what sort of friction have you experienced in that process at all that may be interesting to know?
I invest in golden age, silver age comic books. I do that. They've been doing better than real estate in the stock market. Recently, I did an opportunity fund. So I did opportunity zone, so I took advantage of Trump 2017 tax code jobs act. Did that, just invested in opportunity fund, read upon it. Y'all should maybe look into the opportunity fund. I mean, they gave a class on it this year, Victor Senate earlier this year about it. And you can get invested, you can get 15%. So if I sold a comic book and I can put my profits in there and don't have to pay capital gains for the next 10 years as long as I leave it in my opportunity fund. And as a result, I can keep everything going. And in the 10 year, I get a 15% discount on that capital gains. But I got liquidity and it's steady growing. So that's what I have to share with you all. Take advantage of the opportunities on self-certified with the IRS. Trump's fantastic. It's a goal. You can get investors to invest money in that too. Everybody needs to kind of it's 15% on your capital gains.
So it's interesting you mentioned comic books too, because it's a new form of alternative investments. So we're seeing with the return of apps and internet and everything else, not just comic books, but sneakers, vintage t-shirts, all kinds of things that have vintage Ferraris even, and have had a much higher return than any kind of private equity investment that you ever afford. So when you look at these alternative investments, putting money into like comic books is non-traditional. People don't typically think about that, but there are new sources and new platforms that you can put your money on that, and then incorporate opportunity zones, tax shelters that help with discounting and increasing your net worth through tax shelters like that is an incredible thing. I think the one thing for me is discipline, and being disciplined, having a process every month, going in and manually move money to a certain account or a certain type of platform, whether it's alternative investment or whether it's a Roth IRA or 401k or anything else, making a habit out of that and making sure that I understand what I'm investing in and why. I think that's the first step. Then once you get past that first step of having a habit of actually saving money, then you go and you look at your different types of asset classes. Comic books, opportunity zones, sneakers, what mutual funds, ETFs, and make sure you're diversified, not put all your eggs in one basket.
I agree.
I just wonder how those comic book stores make money, but not anything.
Yeah, I mean, it used to go for 10 cents. Incredible hold. Now it was like 400 action comics and local area. It's funny, I went to, like, it was a lot of money at the Arkansas Comic Con. So one guy, I knew personally, told me he had Batman, the whole collection. He stole the book line. I know you don't have it because I know the top bidders. I know who has those comic books. It's a pretty cool world. It's a pretty cool world. Even with shoes. Even with shoes, you can buy these, these Air Jordans for $225. You got they only release like 3,000 pairs. You can sell them. You can sell them for 500 to 10,000. So you look at the percentages on that. You're talking about it in a week. So if we got $30,000, honestly, probably it's rather to give somebody that has one fee. You got to show your cash, take the cash out. I mean, Wall Street Journal, they did a story on the sneakers just a couple months ago. You got kids 16, like making up to 6 figures in this business. Making up to 6 figures just selling sneakers, which is new wealth to them. They might do. It's like this. There's $1 billion valuation in just only 3 years. They just did something different on eBay. So just how to grow wealth. I think it's kind of like, I think it all started even with the job center. I met you all David Wells. And I know y'all, he's like the father of the job center. Former vice chairman of NASDAQ. I think it's great with you all. It's to see y'all got involved trying to break like new wealth, new ways of doing things. It's the emotional asset. Just the emotional asset.
How many of you are on the stock market? How's it going for you?
Great.
What, in the process of investing in the stock market, what did you have to do in order to become an investor in the stock market? Was there anything in particular that you were required to do? Did you work with a broker? How did you pursue it?
Just be willing to come off of a lump sum of money and be willing to accept risk.
I'm sorry.
I said just be willing to come off of a lump sum of money and accept risk and understand it. That's the first thing. Just understanding what risk you do to actually increase your wealth.
So who gave you the guidance on that?
I actually learned from my aunt, who was a school teacher who retired 10 years early. And she just so happened to be married to a minister, so everything they ever had was paid for. They never paid a single bill, so all of her money, a good chunk of it went into savings. And so she showed me what she had one day in her portfolio. I'm like, oh my God, you're a teacher. Teachers don't have as much money. And it was literally that conversation that sparked my interest in what I could do, because I started out my career making way more money than she ever did. And so it was understanding what, me putting more back could do for my future.
What other questions do we have?
John says if we can go off the beaten path.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
So,
It was the
I realize this is you.
All right.
Caveat, this is
I'm
not.
excited about what questions coming.
Well,
You caveat?
Caveat, it's just not the SEC's official stance per se, but cryptocurrency.
All right, what about it?
Right, so SEC would love to treat it as a security, so they can have input. IRS would love to see cryptos as currency, tax them, and everybody has there's some neat white papers out right now. You've got a legal background as well. What's the prevailing wind? Where's the regulation going? How is this going to be handled?
So here's my perspective on it. I don't think that the SEC is interested in regulating cryptocurrency because we're looking for something new. What instead we're looking at is seeing somebody calling something, a token, as opposed to a stock certificate, what they're doing is raising money for a company. Now, not every time. Sometimes it is currency, it's a token, a utility token. We've got a framework that's out there when it's actually a utility token. But there are other times where people are actually conducting an initial coin offering. And what they're doing is they're raising capital for their company. And it looks just like an issuance of stock, except you call it something else that's given out. And if I handed you, instead of handing you a piece of paper, instead of telling you this is a stock certificate, called it the back of my notepad, but it represents the exact same thing. It's the same framework. You can't call it something different, and there's been a lot of criticism about it, I think, early on, because there was this sense that all the federal regulators were trying to say, whoosh, let's clamor all of this into our territory and stifle market activity. But we've actually got a group called FinHub, it's an interdisciplinary working group, and anybody who is interested in crypto and in tokens can come in and talk and share perspectives. There's an open forum, so if somebody comes and asks a question, we actually share what the question is and the answer that was given, so that we make sure there's transparency and information that's provided. Because the goal is, if it's something that falls within what really it looks like a security, it smells like a security, you just don't call it a security. You still need to do the right things with disclosing to investors the risks of investing and following through with that. And if you do it, we've approved some companies to go through with ICOs. So we are passing that straight through and approving it's the same. Treasury has perspective on it, but if you're making money on it, you still owe taxes.
The risk that I see potential investors looking at is they want to be compliant, and until there's some sense of, well, let's say we're fully compliant with what the SEC laid out, but we don't want to get 5 years down the road, get our hands slapped, get massive liability, taxes, et cetera, because now a different regulatory group has said, well, this is how we're treating it. But we were operating off of these assumptions, SEC had said this, and we were playing within the law, but now somebody else 5 years down the road, another governing body said, well, that's not how we see it, and now investors wouldn't have made this bet. So is that maybe bring a little bit more of the fears of, is there some group who's going to coordinate at a federal level and say, this is our stance until we change it, and you're not going to get like penalized or you can be grandfathered in? Is there any kind of thing that you're hearing across agency?
So there are cross-agency working groups on that, and beyond that, there's actually cross-government, so with foreign groups. So our agency collaborates with other foreign securities regulators to make sure that we're in sync. And to make sure, because so much of this is happening across the border. And so there are a whole lot of conversations that are happening about this. But I will say, there is no agency that is not extra cautious, and no one wants to be the one that gets called in to a congressional hearing to explain why you open the floodgates and you allowed something, and then here is the lineup of some widows and orphans and grandmothers who are going to come in and explain how they have nothing left because they heard this was a great idea on the internet, they lost it. That's what people are scared of. And so you have to take a few steps back from that to get to plan of action. But I think there are good things that are happening on it. And from my perspective, I want our country to remain the hotbed of innovation. I want us to remain at the forefront. That's me personally, and I am committed to whatever I can do individually to make that successful within the bounds of making sure we're doing the right thing.
I don't know about it, but the cryptocurrency would really devalue the dollar. I mean, it's depending on,
There are people that, it depends on the reference for it and what underlies it. But there's, I think it's about how to structure it the right way. That's where so much of the attention comes. There's a lot of interesting things you want to Google. You can go down a rabbit hole and you won't sleep tonight or tomorrow. You can just read things on it and you won't have a clear answer on it. But you have a whole lot of people who are putting their thoughts out there, and crypto, everything's on the internet and on Twitter.
That's
You guys are hand up over here.
So you said earlier the goal of your new office or new department is to help small businesses gain access to capital and be advocates for it. So what I heard from a lot of small businesses or people who want to support small businesses versus customers is the difficulty with finding out about it. Aside from word of mouth and Google searches, how do you find out about the local nonprofit actually offers really good deals, really great customer service, when they're maybe on page 12 of Google and not having a budget to get to that #1 spot.
So that gets into some interesting questions that are being looked at right now on the Hill. I don't have a very answer to where that's going, but that's something people are talking a lot about. I think that the flip of that, so that's kind of a consumer-facing question, which is 1B7, which we don't do as much of. There are other agencies that do it. I'm not hunting on it, but it's not my expertise in wheelhouse. But the flip of that is the question: how do you find out about companies that are looking to raise capital? You know, the mom and pop business that you have no idea in your community that they need capital. And that's something that I am very interested in from if they are out there not looking for, not the customer seeking piece of it, which is related. I mean, you're not going to go out and seek capital without a customer base. But companies that are interested in raising capital and how do they get the word out, how do they reach it, particularly if you don't have a broad network. Because it's very different to raise capital if you've got a bunch of people that you know that are accredited investors versus if you don't have people that you know that are accredited investors. It just changes the dynamics. And we've got rules around general solicitation. Has anybody ever heard the term general solicitation? It's a lovely legal construct, which basically you can boil it down to like using the internet, getting the word out through mass marketing channels, publicizing information without it being just within your network. We have rules that limit what you can do and how you raise capital without using those tools. And we're actively seeking feedback right now on whether we've got the right constructs, because there are a number of businesses who said, look, I'm in an area of the country where I don't have any people that understand my business model. We had somebody come and said, I'm trying to build an entertainment company in South Carolina. 5 people that understand my industry are located in California and they're in New York. They're not nearby me, but he was trying to build it. He was seeking investors. He ultimately went the crowdfunding route because by going online, people were able to see what he was building and they got it in other areas. And so he wound up with all of this traction from investors outside of his own network, both individually and geographically.
So how do you advocate for those small businesses that are seeking capital that aren't in an area where people don't know what they're saying, what they're doing, or what there is in office?
So how do we advocate as an office? We are bringing those stories back to DC and saying, hey, here's a way that this rule or this regulation or this law has unintended consequences. You know, it may have good intentions for this group, but over here, it's causing a breakdown or a disconnect in how they raise money and proposing solutions. So I don't like to, we talked about this earlier, you know, in terms of finding the problem and the solution, which is one of the philosophies of what you do here, and which I think is so powerful. We go out and we want to hear what the problems are. I don't have any interest in proposing policy things because it just sounds fun. I want to know what the pain points are, which ones are the worst, and then let's tackle those in order. Let's come up with solutions that are driven by what problems we're hearing out in the marketplace, as opposed to us sitting within a little DC bubble and coming up with ideas that we think sound good. So that's how we're approaching advocacy for our office, which is getting outside of DC, talking to businesses, hearing about where there are problems, and then advocating for solutions. I think the flip that you're asking about is more on a local level. How do you advocate? Are you asking kind of a local, how do you help as a community advocator? Okay.
So you're a body for.
Yes, effectively. We're not a lobbyist because we're within the government, but you can almost analogize us to a government internal lobbyist.
With the goal of hopefully updating the regulations.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, so much about reducing friction. How do we leverage the technology we use today? You know, as we talked earlier today, so much of our country is dependent on the start of new businesses. You guys know I feel very strongly about the fact that it's wonderful if we want to build Google's here in Rock, and I think that's a terrific objective. We want to look for those unicorns. Day in, day out, it's about those people who are building great businesses. People refer to them as lifestyle businesses. You can make a great lifestyle from a business. God bless you. I think that's awesome. And that's really what is the backbone of our country. Yes, there are other Googles in here, easily Amazon, and these things that are also come from. You know, we can never forget Arkansas, right? Remember Walmart? JD, remember Tyson? So those are pretty remarkable things in the scheme of things. And I know for me, when I first came to Arkansas, and Northwest Arkansas the first time, I walked through Walton's and I had a much different change. Thought around what I thought about Sam Walton and all. And realized really what a unicorn he built there. happened here. So Arkansas's got some amazing DNA when it comes to these things, and I find it very energizing and empowering to be part of this state, part of this ecosystem. It's an overused word, I don't like it, but
It's stuck, it's here for a while.
yeah,
Yeah.
You're not getting rid of it.
no, but it is. It's very energizing, and I think we have so many people here doing great things. You know, like Steve, for example, who is really helping younger people learn how to do the things that enable them to be great business people and build those foundations to build businesses at a very early age and understand the right methodologies. You know, we don't write 50-page business plans. Thank God. Those were, you know, nobody read them anyway, right? They still invest in it. So the point is that we have approaches to methodologies.
So, I'm super interested in knowing more about the rules around solicitation and how we might figure out what we can around them perhaps. My personal story, around raising funds has to do with the fact that my observation, I thought it's easier to raise funds. I wonder if you're young and male, but that's a whole other issue. Primarily if you have something that is a tangible asset, but if you're a real information technology company, the Arkansas market doesn't seem to understand the growth trajectory on that or the amount of capital that's needed to make something like that happen. I sat in Charles Gordon's office earlier in the summer where he took a deep look at what I'm trying to do and said, this is true. And you will never get somebody in Arkansas to understand it. It's way too sophisticated for this market. You have to go to California. That's one of the great points you just write me, Jackie, but nonetheless. So, you know.
One of those education trust funds is not really access to it. It is a credible local company that helps public taxes, taxes.
Yeah. And he gets data projects like nobody else. And you know, so that's all fine and good, but if you don't have enough funding to go to the valley, travel all over the U.S. and find those people who are particularly interested in data projects, you're kind of getting out. So how do you solicit to people that you don't know? How do you find the people who get those projects? And I feel like we're kind of a little bit have our risk on.
Well, I mean, it goes to also what you hear a lot of people talk about, particularly if you think maybe you're growing in California, you hear a lot of people talk about people invest in people they know.
Yes.
They've seen be successful. And that's part of just people invest in trust networks. And so the question really that you're asking is how do you break into a new trust network and develop connections and rapport such that they think, okay, I not only get your company, but I like you. Because people invest in people. Fundamentally, you know, and for those who have investors who are in the group or who've gone out and tried to find investors, you recognize that they're yes, they're investing in your company, they're also really locked in on you, which raises terms that tie back to the now. But that, I mean, it raises interesting questions where, you know, it sounds like you also have similar to the gentleman I mentioned from South Carolina, that you have a little bit of a mismatch with a product that doesn't line up with the investors. There's good investors, but they may not get the product. And I think you've got to find the right investors where it matches the risk tolerance and their interest in investing. And I think that right now we need to take a fresh look at there will always be challenges where companies can't find as much money, or there's a mismatch where you're looking for money and it may not be there, or you think you've got a marketable product and somebody else beats you in the punch and you've missed your opportunity. Those things are going to happen with just kind of natural economic dynamism of times. The thing that I want to make sure isn't happening is that our rules are what's getting in the way. That our rules are not the friction point that are keeping you from connecting. If it's the cost of the airplane to Silicon Valley, that's one thing. if it's us telling you you can't get on the airplane, which we're not, just using it as an example, that's another thing that we need to be taking a fresh look at. And sometimes it's not always apparent. Sometimes we hear stories and it's not always apparent because we know the ins and outs of the rules and the regs. And we can spot where a lawyer may have told you or someone may give you good advice, but don't do something without explaining the underpinnings of why. And so you're not going out and putting out a webpage saying, you know, seeking capital now, I have this wonderful M&A consulting business and this tool that we've built. That's good advice for you to not go out and put that website out, or else you're doing an offering that needs to fit within very strict parameters. It's not inadvertently doing public. And so, to the extent that there's something that you have that's a friction point from our rules, we want to hear about it, and to make sure that we're addressing it. And we're actively seeking feedback on that and making recommendations around, do we have the right constructs for enabling companies to, you know, use the economy principles and find the right investors.
So I've got another question we haven't discussed today, which is the change in the law that's occurring as it relates to the cannabis industry, investing in the cannabis industry. What's the SEC's position on that? I mean, federally, obviously, it's, and I'll leave it at that.
No, it isn't. The issues that I care about more get into more of the banking side of things. That's where it seems like the issues are coming down for the companies, and so there are investors who are interested in it. I'm not hearing anybody come in and say that the issue lies with us. I mean, as long as you're doing the offering and you're making the right disclosures. Now, one of the disclosures may be that you have trouble with banking with it, which is a valid disclosure that they should be making to investors. But I'm not hearing a lot of people come to us saying that there is something from a securities perspective that's causing an issue here. It more has to do with other compliance and legal hurdles that businesses are facing when you have a mismatch of federal and state laws.
I think that's probably going to change the position of so at least that seems to be the current kind of motion. So we'll all sit around and smoke dope instead of.
It would make this much more entertaining than
I'm sorry.
than my water.
I think you're pretty entertaining. What other questions do we have for Mike? Please.
A question about the size of the business that the SEC focuses on.
Yeah.
And you know, we talk about this $1 billion crowdfunding, which is small, but you know, their businesses that the owner's trying to raise $5,000, $50,000, you know, $70,000. Is there a focus on that level of small business?
Yes. So, I mean, small doesn't have a lower bound on it. Small is really anything. And then we basically cap out, once you get really large and sophisticated and complex, it moves to some other teams. But we have, I mean, to the question you're asking about looking for really small amounts of money, often what we hear is people that are looking for $5,000 or $50,000, they're not really looking for an investor. Often they're looking for debt, or they're struggling to find somebody that will fund, so then they may turn to investors that either crowdfunding or other tools there. But the same tools that you can use to raise $500,000 or $5 million can be used to raise $500 or $5,000. The question just becomes whether or not we have the right tier compliance structure. Some people have raised whether there should be a micro exemption for something under $1 now. But that comes with its own, the devil's in the details, I think it's right, what that level should be.
How do people know? I'm sorry.
Do y'all oversee the EB5? Like, if I have EB5 investors, and therefore you all oversee that, and is it still 500,000? Or how long is it? 800 or $1 billion?
So the EB5 program is actually, so our role in that is really on just, it's on the capital structure as opposed to the program eligibility, and all of those elements are separate. So that's where it gets to be such an interesting thing when you start thinking about, okay, I'm trying to structure a deal and there may be tax incentives over here, and then there may be, you know, whether it's EB5 or some other reason that people are investing, you wind up with a patchwork of some very complex structures. But at its core, I mean, those transactions are usually private exemptions. Yes?
On an investor, let's say if I wanted to give someone $10,000, $5,000 towards the company, do I have to feel accredited to, in order to do something like that? I have to go through accreditation first, or how is that really?
So if you're gonna go through one of the private exemptions, most of them, the ones that are more typically used, do require you to be an accredited investor. There are some exceptions. You're allowed to have a certain number of non-accredited investors in private placements. The challenge with that comes, there are certain additional disclosure requirements that need to be made, and a purchaser representative that needs to be involved. And often, we've seen people that are using it. The challenge is that often the companies say it's expensive for us to go through, and it changes the deal a little bit for us, so they have been a little bit more hesitant to use that.
What's normally the cost of
So there's not a cost to the investor. It's more of the compliance cost for the company, making sure they've got the right documentation and verification, and then the day prepared and all the disclosures. Companies are doing it. And I can't remember exactly what the statistic is right now on the number that used it. It's a small percentage relative to the overall kind of deal flow activity. Companies are doing it, but you see a lot that just say, you know what, it's a little bit of a headache the way that the tools work. At least that's what I've heard.
Well, I want to invest, and I want to be an investor, but I want to know that I'm going to get my money back as well. And make sure I have all the parameters taken care of.
Well, I think that with any investment comes recognizing the risk of the whole thing. There is no that you're going to get X percentage return, or even that you're going to get any return. And you have to make sure that you have the right diversification and risk tolerance for the investment. That's one of the critical pieces, and one thing that we do a lot. We have a wonderful website, investor.gov, and it's set up. It has fantastic information out there, including information about things to think through, things that you should ask, whether it's an investment advisor or that you should ask a company you're interested in investing in, that goes through kind of a mental checklist of really important variables that you should consider for your own personal decision making. But I highly recommend. They've really done a good job with that, and they do a lot of events. They did 150 events geared towards investor education last year out of our Office of Investor Education and Advocacy at the SEC, which is really incredible. I mean, that's almost an event every other day, not counting weekends. I don't think they do weekend events. But they have some wonderful resources that are available online, and I've found myself going over to look at some of those just to say, okay, that's really helpful. We need the corollary of what they have on investor.gov for companies to be able to navigate in a really, concise, digestible format.
And I think there's one company that's Houston, they're coming out.
There's a lot of companies coming out of Texas.
They're like the next Silicon.
And everybody loves to say they're the next Silicon Valley.
I'll stay in Texas. I like Arkansas.
Boston's been a big mover, right? Obviously, it's remarkable things that happen in Nashville, Chattanooga. There's so much. And listen, the good news for us is that, places like Arkansas are not flying over quite as quickly as they used to, and that the opportunities are here. We often talk about this as we relate to the companies that we have come through the accelerators and also the programs, is that, you invest a buck in Arkansas, there's a heck of a lot further than this in San Francisco or New York. So as an investor, investing in companies, that are close to you, that are in your own world, inside your state, within your community, you're supporting your own community, ultimately perhaps growing jobs. You're able to watch these companies grow. Sometimes you can be participatory and take a board position or take an advisory role as far as those things are concerned. But the great news is that your chances for success in many ways are much greater. But as an investor, you're actually a little de-risked in investing in places like Arkansas, where people simply, their dollar goes further, that's more runway, that's more opportunity for them to be successful. So there's a story to be told there, and I think it has merit without question. So I think some of you experienced that.
Also, think we need to do more telling the story of things that happen in other areas of the country. We talked a little bit earlier today about kind of, we only hear certain splashy mega deals or what make the front page. But there's a lot of really interesting companies and really neat opportunities and stories that you can learn from. I'm a firm believer of relative earlier, I'm a firm believer that talent is spread across the country, but opportunity and visibility of what that talent is doing is not. And I am excited to be hearing from companies that are in non-traditional innovation ecosystems, to use the word that's way overused, because I think that we need to be telling stories of how companies are finding success in places like this, because they're really incredible things. And we don't need to always be trying to use another city or place as a measuring stick. Everybody has their own different dynamics.
Well, as we've talked today as well earlier, is we're blessed that we have the access that we have in the state. We can make things happen. You guys hang around here enough to know that it's not unusual to find a governor, someone of that nature, part of our legislature, part of doing obviously French helping create this today. We have
Securities Exchange Commission.
Yeah.
Perfect example.
there you have it. Pop
Well,
in,
hey,
see us there.
right there, Wade.
It's there in Little Rock. Yeah, so and that's the thing is this is extraordinary. We're getting a chance to develop a relationship with the SEC here in our town of Little Rock. Obviously, these two great women who are taking time to be with us today to share what's happening and trying to be helpful to us and grow our businesses and the opportunities that exist. And we really have an advantage at the end of the season. And some people in this community think that.